so today's video is going to be my December perfume tray. I'm going to pick 10 fragrances to wear and concentrate on during December, and I'm also going to review the fragrances I wore most during November. If you haven't seen me before, I'm Claire. I talk mainly about fragrance history, fragrance science, and I also just do some straight perfume reviews, these monthly trays, and also fun perfume tags. So if that kind of thing interests you, then please do consider subscribing, and please also press the like button if you do enjoy this kind of content. So November, how was it for you? For me, it was basically me being ill for most of it. I had flu and then I had sinusitis. So there really wasn't much perfume sniffing going on in my world because I couldn't smell anything for about 2 weeks with sinusitis, which really limited my content because I could only put out videos on stuff I'd already smelt. So now I'm back to normal functions. I'm really enjoying fragrance again, and really November's perfume wearing was somewhat limited because of that. But the ones that I ended up wearing the most were the ones around the start of the month and the end of the month. So at the start of the month, I was mainly wearing Chelsea Morning because I just love the bonfire vibes of Chelsea Morning. It just puts me in mind of this time of year perfectly. It's that sweet lemony burnished toffee maple syrup ginger biscuit kind of smell with this fragrance that I just find totally addictive. And also somebody came up to me and told me that I smelled like butterscotch, so clearly other people can smell it too. Another of my most worn fragrances was Fifth Avenue Royale, and I wore this one more towards the end of the month. This is just a really soft kind of suede fragrance, and I really love the booziness in this fragrance. And I just love how it dries down really. It's just a nice gentle feeling fragrance. It's an easy reach. The other two that I ended up wearing more than once from my tray were Witchy by Vryao, which is a patchouli fragrance with some cinnamon and lots of resins. And then the other fragrance was Phoenix Flame by Mabelle, which is a totally unique fragrance for me. It's sumac, so it's quite fiery feeling. And it's also got this lovely resins in the dry down, which to me, again, is completely November. I love those resinous fragrances around this time of year. So those are my 4 most worn fragrances in November. So for my December tray, I really want some Christmas spice kind of fragrances, some powdery fragrances, some sweet comforting vanillic fragrances, and I also want some just loud going out fragrances that are just fun. So let's see what's on my tray for December. So I can't really go through a December without putting this one on my tray. This one just is party season to me, and it was one I reached for a lot last December, so it has to go on my tray this month. This one is Rouge, and it's by Givenchy. So this is really a very slightly spicy fragrance. It's very, very mild on the spice scale. It's ginger here and citrus in the opening. But really, as this dries down, it's a creamy tuberose and also a beautiful creamy sandalwood and creamy vanilla. It's the dry down that I love with this fragrance. You know, lots of fragrances have you at hello, but ultimately what you need is a fragrance where you find the dry down to be addictive, and this is that fragrance for me. So yeah, Rouge is my first pick for December. So my second pick, I'm sticking with Diptyque Orphéon fragrances, and this time it's the one I probably most associate with Christmas because of the spices here. So this one is Kenzo Jungle L'Elephant. I love the bottle of this. I love how undulating it is. I love the elephant on top. I just think this is just so fun, but also just such a fantastic fragrance, and I'm so pleased that it's still being made. So Jungle L'Elephant is a real playoff between cool and warm spices. So on the cool side, you've got the cardamom, you've got the licorice, and on the warm side, you've got the cumin, the coriander, and also the caraway. And then, of course, there's the most Christmassy element to this of all, which is the cloves, really adding to the whole warmth of the fragrance. I think this is the kind of fragrance I was completely scared of when I first went into kind of experiencing fragrances. I didn't like dry, I didn't like spicy, and I think this would have just been too much for me. I think nowadays, this is the kind of fragrance that I find inventive and striking and just love wearing, especially when it's super cold. This in the dry down is just a milder version of those spices, along with a slightly tropical feeling slightly fruity, very mildly fruity vanilla. And I just love this one at Christmas. I just think it suits the foods we eat at Christmas. I think it suits the cold weather at Christmas. And I think this also is one of those going out fragrances as well. People do ask you what you're wearing because it is very distinctive and it's something that people don't smell too often. Any designer fragrance nowadays would not be daring enough to make a fragrance like this. So that's Kenzo Jungle L'Elephant. So next is one of the few celebrity fragrances still in my collection. This one's Fenty. So I bought this last year and it was something I totally fell in love with. It's a fragrance that I think reminds me of my signature fragrance in my 20s. It takes me back to Lola by Marc Jacobs. It's also a fragrance that makes me think slightly of the same rose that's in Stella McCartney's Stella, which is a fragrance by the same perfumer. So this one, I love the fruitiness at the beginning. It smells to me almost like a mixture of a mandarin orange, but the inside of the peel of a mandarin orange, and blueberry. The blueberry is very distinctive and very interesting. It's something you don't smell a lot in fragrances. Also, this has a nice sweet dark rose, and also it has this kind of slightly sweet, almost slightly marshmallowy aspect to it to me, and also this dark truffly aspect to it as well. It's slightly spiced, it's a little bit earthy, but really it's that dark rose that melds the whole thing together, and that's really what this fragrance is about. It's about the rose. I love this one. I think it shines in the colder weather. So its time is now, so that's Fenty. So next I'm going to choose a fragrance that I don't talk about a lot because it's been discontinued a while, and it's one that I kind of don't pick up a lot, but I picked it up the other day and I was just taken aback by how good this is. And I really haven't worn it in a very long time, and it made me want to put it on my tray. And I also think this fragrance is totally this time of year as well, because it's a party fragrance to me. So this one is Marc Jacobs Decadence. So ironically, I got this one as a Christmas present a few years ago, but I had been obsessed with this one for years before I actually got a bottle of it. And I'm so pleased I got this fragrance at the point I did, because literally the next year it was discontinued. So Decadence, I think when I first smelt Decadence, I had no clue what I was smelling. And it's really interesting to go back to it now and to realise, you know, which aspects of this fragrance I really enjoy. And I think for me, this is just a really deep, slightly spicy vanilla fragrance, and that's why it's so likeable. I also think it's that dark fruitiness. So the plum here doesn't stand out as something particularly boozy, but it definitely does have this mysterious darkness. The vetiver also makes this a very cool feeling fragrance. I mean, like a streetwise kind of feeling fragrance. Vetiver is very unusual to find as a note in pre-2020 fragrances marketed towards women. And that's what made this one stand out, is that unique combination. And I love wearing this because people always ask you what you're wearing because it's so distinctive, and now it's becoming less and less common to smell it. But yeah, I'm going to really enjoy wearing this one during December, and I'm looking forward to reacquainting myself with this fragrance and just to getting to know it again. So that's Marc Jacobs Decadence. So this next fragrance is really a vintage fragrance. It's something that really takes me back to my childhood in the 80s. I feel like everybody who grew up in the 80s or even the 90s had some relative who would be wearing this one at Christmas. So this one is Chanel's Coco. So this is a dark, spicy rose fragrance with a slightly animalic feeling purr in the dry down. Very much tamed these days compared to how it used to be. But this is really a fragrance that I've done a 360 on. I feel like, you know, as a child, fragrances all smell very strong and very off-putting, and I didn't like this kind of style of fragrance. But I feel like as I've grown up and as I've explored fragrances more, this is the kind of fragrance that I now enjoy wearing at this time of year. This is a very loud and very confident fragrance, but also a very elegant fragrance. This is something I would wear if I was doing some kind of important presentation at work. Some fragrance that I needed to be, say, I'm here for, really. I think this one has a real innate sexiness about it as well. I kind of overlooked this one for a long, long time. But ultimately, this is actually probably my favourite of the Chanel fragrances. It's definitely not the most wearable, but it's definitely the one that stands out. It's the one that makes the biggest statement. So that's Coco by Chanel. So from one extreme to the other, we've gone from really vintage to now very modern. This one came out this year. I was gifted this by Mugler back in, I think it was May. This one came out. And I said at the time I thought it was quite an all year round fragrance. But I think this one, I just want to try it out in winter because I've not experienced it in cold weather. And I think the tuberose in this fragrance might really work in cold weather. So this one is Mugler's Alien Extra Intense. This is my favourite of the L'Oreal releases from the Alien line. And the tuberose really has a super creaminess about it. The vanilla is very creamy as well. It's a very yellow feeling, very soft feeling, enveloping feeling vanilla. I think the cashmere helps in that regard. It's quite a huggy fragrance really, and I think that's going to work perfectly in colder weather. I really prefer this one to the original EDP, the modern EDP, because I find the EDP a little bit soapy feeling, and I think this one is slightly less soapy feeling. There's still jasmine here, but it's really the tuberose that dominates overall. And I'm looking forward to testing this one out in the colder weather. So that's Alien Extra Intense. So this next fragrance is a really, really huggy fragrance. This is a really powdery, dense feeling fragrance. This one is Montale's Sweet Oriental Dream. I bought this one back in the summer and it's kind of a similar story, except I just really didn't feel like this was an all year round fragrance. This one is something that I just don't think I can possibly wear in the summer. It's too big. It's too powdery, but I think this one would work really well in the winter and I want to try it out. So I'm putting it on my tray this month. So this is quite a bitter almond fragrance to begin with, and then it calms down and goes into more of a marzipan-like direction, which is why I think this one might suit this time of year because it's kind of appropriate. It's powdery, it's sweet, it's floral. It's got a warm pink rose with a little bit of a touch of an indolic floral covered with a ton of powder. But as this dries down, the honey and the almond really begin to pop in this fragrance, although it does stay powdery, and really the texture overall, not the smell, but definitely the texture, is something like baby powder. So it is a very comforting, cool weather fragrance for me. So this one has to go on my December tray. So that's Sweet Oriental Dream by Montale. So the next one is back to spicy, and this one just says Christmas all over it for me. This is Jo Malone's Pomegranate Noir. So this is quite a clove heavy fragrance, but it has this really nice, dry, rich fruitiness to it. It makes me think of preserved fruits like maybe dried red currants, preserved plums and other spiced fruits that you might use in cooking at this time of the year. It's also dark, woody and resinous, and it's almost a little bit smoky. It always makes me think of being in a forest near a warm fire. This is the only Jo Malone fragrance I have in my collection because sometimes I find Jo Malone to have very disappointing longevity, but Pomegranate Noir is actually a really long-lasting fragrance on me, and it's one that I just think of almost like, you know, outdoorsy walks at this time of year. It makes me think of forests, it makes me think of hedgerows, it makes me think of dried leaves. It's just a very autumnal, winter-feeling fragrance, but with those Christmassy fruits, it's perfect. So that's Pomegranate Noir. So the next fragrance is one of those fun, fruity, you know, going out kind of fragrances. It's a big fragrance, and this one is Sirene by Fragrance de Bois. So I was gifted this one sometime last year, I think. I think it was around November time. It's something that is so different to everything else I've smelt, and I think that the combination here is just unique. So this starts off really super fruity. It's a very, very mixed red fruit fragrance to me, not just cherry. Everyone talks about the cherry, but to me there's perhaps some strawberry here as well. It's very red, very fruity. There's also a very slightly smoky, resinous aspect to this fragrance. There's also, as this dries down, a kind of milkiness. It turns into something that some people in my comments have described to me as a fruity milkshake, and I get that. I get that is how you could perceive this fragrance in the dry down. But this is quite tempered because the oud gives it a nice warm fuzziness, and there's even more balance because of some green and woody feeling cypriol. I really love the play off between the fruitiness, the oud, the greenness and the milkiness in this fragrance. It's absolutely unique, definitely something that you really need to smell to appreciate. And I'm really intrigued to try the new flanker that's come out. I think it's called Sirene Privé. I really honestly can't imagine that it's going to be as good as this fragrance, but I'm going to hold my judgment till I've smelt it. If anybody has smelt it, please do let me know. So that's Sirene by Fragrance de Bois. So this last fragrance is really a contender for my Christmas party fragrance. I'm not sure which one to choose. I might choose Sirene, I might choose this one. So this one's Diptyque Orphéon. So this fragrance is based around the idea of a jazz club, I think, and I find this incredibly difficult to describe because I seem to smell something different in it every time I wear it. I'm very, very confused by this fragrance, basically. So this one, it opens smooth and floral. It's got a real kind of creaminess. It makes me think of pink, creamy soaps. It then becomes a little bit peppery. It's even got a little bit of a foresty freshness thanks to some juniper, but it's still sweet, floral and smooth. Later on it's slightly powdery, even slightly makeup-y, but still the sweetness, the woodiness and the warmth is there in the dry down. It's a very clean feeling fragrance to me and it's something I'm happy to wear to work, but it's also something that feels incredibly special and something that I would want to wear when I go out. I just really love this one. So yeah, that's my second Christmas party contender, Orphéon by Diptyque. So that's my final fragrance on my December tray. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have enjoyed the video, then please do press the like button and please also consider subscribing if you haven't done already. And please let me know what you've been wearing the most during November and also which fragrances will be on your December tray. Do you have a wish list for Christmas as well, or perhaps you picked up something during Black Friday? I'd love to know. So thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.